Sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it yet. Just go forward. So what do you need to do? How do you stand out? So what you need to do is be that person that's different and is bigger than you think. Rise from the ashes and fly like the phoenixes that you are. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome, welcome. Appreciate you guys being on as always, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern time. My name is Andrew David. This is Blake Newbar's partner program. This is the High Performance Call. So appreciate all of you guys being on here live. Always love seeing your faces. At the same time, if you're watching on the replay or if you haven't yet, all of these are on YouTube, so they pop up. If you missed the call we did last week with Steve Sims, go watch it. If you liked it, go watch it again. As a note to that, so I'm going to give you guys the address tomorrow. I got to get it again from his, from his assistant. But I've got my Christmas card pretty much ready to go. You know, I ordered a bunch of ones. These are a little bit different. And, so I got ones that have like a pop-up in them. So I figured something a little different. But anyway, if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, go watch the thing with Steve Sims from last week. It's on there on YouTube. Now, what I wanted to talk about, we go through, I think, you're upset with yourself because you're expecting too much too quickly, right? You're expecting this transformation to happen right away. And really, most of us are a lot more like a caterpillar and a moth. And that's a great analogy that a lot of people have heard about. The caterpillar goes into, it's not a cocoon. It's what? Not the papyrus. What is it called? Does anybody know?
Metamorphosis.
Well, it goes through a metamorphosis, but it gets put into what? Oh my gosh, that's going to bug me. All right, somebody find that. Google that for me. What's the name of the shell? But so what happens a lot of times, people think, well, they go into not the cocoon, but whatever the heck this is called, the pappus or something.
Pupus.
And then
Chrysalis.
The chrysalis. Yeah, there you go.
There you
They transform into the chrysalis, and all of a sudden they're a butterfly, right? That's how it works. They're a caterpillar, they go in the chrysalis, and then they turn into a butterfly. But there's a bit more. There's 4 stages of life for a caterpillar, right? They start out as the egg, and then as they begin to grow up, get out of the egg, and it's time to leave the egg, they turn into a larva. And first thing they have to do is they have to eat themselves out of the egg. They're starving, right? They haven't had any sustenance yet. They need to get out of it, so they eat the egg. And then they get out and they eat the rest of it. And then they probably eat all of the leaf that's there. And maybe they eat the leaf next to it. And sometimes that's even dangerous to them because some of the enzymes and other things inside the leaf can mess up their digestive system. So they got to be careful. They have to hope that mom deposited them where they needed to be. But they go through this whole process. And then it's not just, okay, I did this and then I ate a bunch and then I show up into and I start this process of, the chrysalis and building this chrysalis out. It doesn't work like that. Then they become the caterpillar. And they go around and they eat and they eat and they eat. And some caterpillars can get up to 2,000 times the size that they were when they were born as a larva. 2,000, that much growth. Now, during that process of growth, caterpillars, just like many insects, have an exoskeleton. Does everybody know what an exoskeleton is? I'm sure all of you were assuming you would get elementary school biology today. So here we go, right? So an exoskeleton is that hard, durable shell on the outside as opposed to the inside. And as they go through this process, the exoskeleton doesn't actually grow, but they continue to grow. So then what happens with the exoskeleton? They have to shed it. And they'll shed it up to 4 to 5 times during their life. So in order for them to keep growing, and they push against this thing, holding them in until they finally shed it and they let it go. And that happens over and over and over again. Until it's time, hormonally, mentally, the mental synapses are firing off, and they say, "Hey, it's time to turn into go from a caterpillar to a butterfly." So, hey, it's time to start this metamorphosis. So they go and they look for the right kind of leaf, and then there's a couple of different kinds. Some of them build a little silk kind of button hook to hang themselves from, and others will create almost like a hammock to support themselves. But they start the process of this chrysalis. Now, a lot of us think that the chrysalis is something that they build. It's not. It's another exoskeleton. It's something that's below their skin that they get to this point where they go, that's it. And they got to shed the skin that's on the outside. And this chrysalis then forms, right? Now, does anybody, this is the fun part, does anybody know what happens inside a chrysalis? Enzymes and other things get in there that are already inside the body. The enzymes for the chrysalis or inside the caterpillar start to break down the caterpillar's body. It doesn't just start, growing the arm and turning in. It turns into goo. It breaks down into just this slime, and there's only a handful of cells and things that remain intact to breathe, and a few mental, synapses firing off, and then a couple of other things that are essentially laying dormant that have been with it this whole life. These cells that will use the goo to turn into the pieces that it needs to then grow into a butterfly. But it turns into goo, slime, for crying out loud, inside this chrysalis. And then after as little as a couple of weeks, all of a sudden, that caterpillar, which has melted down into next to nothing, turned into slime, starts to create legs and wings until eventually it has to break out of the chrysalis, and then it's transformed. And the wings begin to harden, and then they're able to fly away. They turn from this weird little caterpillar into this beautiful butterfly or moth or this amazing creature. See, a lot of us are going through this process and we're going, well, damn it, I'm a butterfly and I'm pretty and beautiful. And this is, or we think that that's how we were born. And we forget that there's a process to get there.
Andrew,
we forget that in order to get to, go ahead.
No, but there is a downfall. Butterflies only live like 2 days.
Okay. You're killing my metaphor. I need you to be quiet. At this point, we're talking about, shh. Come on.
Sorry.
All right. So we're talking about the beauty and the possibilities and what you can become. What's that, Rick? Say again?
For a butterfly, that's a long time.
Hey, there you go. You're also a little bit bigger, so stretch the imagination here, ladies and gentlemen. Time is a relative construct to each individual creature. Absolutely. Thank you there, Michael. The point of this is that for its adult life, it becomes beautiful and amazing, and everybody wants to look at it. Let's kind of go that route. But a lot of us are going through this process, and we think that you just, hey, I'm going to go from this to that. Look, maybe you're in the middle of that caterpillar stage still, and you need to shed your skin a couple more times. And you've got that wrap around you right now, that exoskeleton, and you need to tear it apart and break out and continue that growth. And you need to continue to consume, it's eating. What you need to do is your knowledge, your affirmations, your personal development, your growth, you stretching yourself. That's what you need to do in order to get to the point where you can then allow the chrysalis to form. Some of you guys haven't gotten to that point yet. In order to make changes within ourselves, we need to change from the inside out. Absolutely. That's where it starts. This is something, guys, anybody that's done any course online, here's this whole thing about personal development. And I can't tell you how many times people go, I don't need that. I just want the list of what needs to get done. Just give me the stuff to check off so that I can get started. And that's great. And I guarantee that person occasionally there are people that do, there always are, but rarely the people that ignore themselves are able to achieve any kind of lasting success. They're much more likely to give up. It doesn't work because they become impatient because they did what they had to do. They never changed. And honestly, that comes out in your advertising, in your efforts. They never put in the work themselves. And so nothing happened with the business. And so they jump to something else and they go, oh, that list must have been wrong. It must have been missing something. Really, the key to a lot of this is you, and you were the part that was missing. And maybe you're still going through that caterpillar phase and you just haven't recognized it yet. And you have to be willing to do that. And then you get to that chrysalis phase. And maybe some of you guys are there right now. And you feel like you've just turned into a pile of goo. Right? You want to wrap yourself up in a blanket. You go, what the hell is going on? I don't have the strength or motivation or wherewithal to get up and do anything today. And maybe that's just what you're doing. But you got to remember that even there within you, there are these seeds of greatness that if you allow them to grow and work, you can get there. But you've got to go through that process. You've got to break down everything that you are. because that's what the caterpillar has to do. It has to break down everything except for just enough. See, a caterpillar and going to the butterfly, they've done studies where a caterpillar, where they would, anytime, kind of a Pavlovs experiment, where they would introduce a gas with a certain odor, and anytime they would introduce that, there was a tiny electric shock. And what they were doing is kind of testing the caterpillars to see what would happen. Well, so they would start to avoid, anytime they start to smell that gas, they'd run away to get away from any possible electric shock. Well, what they did is when the butterflies hatched, they'd introduce that gas and the butterflies would take off. So they remembered things. Meaning during that process of the crystallization, while that was going on, not everything went away. Not everything disappeared. They remembered. So they remained at their core who they were. During this transformation, many layers of you should change. Not necessarily will. They only will if you allow them to and if you push yourself through it. But at your core, you'll remain who you are. You don't have to worry about giving up yourself. What you're worried about doing is giving up the pieces that aren't going to allow you to fly, that aren't going to allow you to be all that you can be, right? That aren't going to allow you to grow into your truest potential. But there is that breakdown process that has to be had. So you need to assess where you are, because we're not blessed with the biological capabilities of just burning out our heart and soul and bad habits and all of this nonsense that we want to get rid of in order to create the beauty that's there. What we need to do is go through that process and then break out and then go out and live the best lives that we can. That's kind of what I want you guys to look at today, is just recognize where you are in this process. You know, are you at the third time you've shed your skin as a caterpillar? Are you finally crawling up into the tree and starting to spin that little silk button in order to turn into the chrysalis? Where are you? What part of the process are you on? The cool thing about being an entrepreneur, and Steve was kind of talking about this, you know, look, you'll do well and then it'll go away, and then you'll do well and it'll go away, and until you finally make it and it works. So I feel like sometimes if I take this metaphor and I stretch it out even more, because I'm allowed to, damn it, because that's what I do. Maria, thank you. Maybe you go back to that process of becoming the butterfly and then going through the caterpillar one more time. And it's not just, hey, I've become it and that's forever going to be it. Maybe you need to, from there, evolve again.
Andrea, I love you.
Love you too. Those of you that are willing to go through that process of unlearning, like Carolyn's talking about, relearning, developing, and allowing yourself to change, will understand that as frustrating as this process may be, it's just part of the process and you can overcome it. Those of you that expect to go from birth as an entrepreneur into a butterfly with nothing in between, those are the people that have the worst times. Now, if you're stuck in this loop and you just keep being reborn as the caterpillar and you seem to be missing the butterfly, sit down, figure out what skill it is that needs to be adapted, where you can learn it or where you can outsource it. You don't have to learn everything. Some people can help pick up that slack for you. You've got a community here willing to support you. You've got a life that you're able to live that is, you're capable of so much. Just understand that process, right? So on that note, there's no end to psychospiritual evolution. Absolutely. Enlightenment is open-ended. Yeah. Guys, go out, find a way, turn into the butterflies that you are, but recognize where in the process you are. And then as you do it, rise up from all these flames, rise up from the ashes, fly like the phoenixes that you are, get out and kick some tail. Have an amazing day. I will see you tomorrow.
Andrew, please don't leave.
Okay, sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it yet. Just go forward. So what do you need to do? How do you stand out? So what you need to do is be that person that's different and is bigger than you think. Rise from the ashes and fly like the phoenixes that you are.